Okay, here we go. So this really short presentation, I'm planning on keeping it under 15 minutes, is going to be about small tweaks that can produce big impacts in your website. And that's often what we're doing. And your journey might be a little like this in that you launch a website for your business, you're comfortable with it, you're happy, hopefully you're happy with on the day you launch. But over time, you grow dissatisfied with the website in some degree. Your technology changes, your business changes. Maybe it's not producing the outcome you had have hoped for. Maybe it is to some degrees. That's where we look at opportunities to make improvements, enhancements to existing websites. And often that means we can work on a shoestring budget, really. So the investment might be minimal, but we're applying our expertise and recommendations. And by the way, I'm going to show you some tools and tips, things you can do yourself to review where your website currently sits and what you might be able to manipulate and work with. And we're going to look at some ways to look at sites so we can see what is working in other sites and model on that to produce a better outcome for your own business. So we'll be looking at bulletproof rules, what I call the bulletproof rules, tools and tips, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end, if you want to talk a little further on how we might be able to get our hands dirty on your website as well, and make some recommendations, suggestions appropriate for your own unique circumstances. And every business is slightly different. So we'll talk about the radical improvements to a website and the incremental. So a radical website redesign is where your website's that far gone that you need a brand new website. And it's not always the case. If you've kept your website for a long time, then that may be required. And if you're a small business and it's severely outdated, the message is outdated, the design looks outdated, it doesn't work with the modern day standards, it's that far gone, you might be best to start with a clean slate. But oftentimes, if you haven't let it get too far gone, there's salvageable items. So maybe the content is right, the marketing message is right, maybe the design is okay, maybe the photographs are okay, and maybe the colors, the fonts, whatever it is. But maybe we can look at, and I'll show you in a sec, some tools where you can review other websites that we know are successful and look at items that make them successful and how we can massage that into your own website. So there's huge benefits in incremental if you're at that point where you're not that too far gone, and there's benefits for radical, but there's also risks for radical redesign. So that's what I'll talk about, the risks. When you do a radical redesign, imagine if your website's performing reasonably well right now, but then you go ahead and do a brand new website. You might love the new design. Oftentimes people just grow sick of their design where it's not actually that big an issue. With a little refinement, maybe it'll work, it'll look a lot better. But if people just grow sick of their own websites and they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, create a new website, oftentimes that might mean if they're starting from scratch, they might, if they don't do things properly, they might lose all their traffic because they might have earned some credit in Google's eyes and search engine optimization. They might have been attracting traffic. So there's all these types of risks that might convert worse than the previous website, even though the previous website might look a little dated or whatever it is that's bugging you. You might produce a worse outcome if you do a radical improvement and you don't know which changes that you did make, because you've changed everything, what changes worked and what didn't, and what produced an outcome and what would have. So the incremental improvement can help in that regard. So you're only changing a few things at a time, so you've got an understanding of what actually worked, and you can revert back if you need to. If things went worse, you can revert back to what you had, try something new, and you're making a lesser investment because it's smaller changes. So that's the pros and cons. That's why you would potentially look at not going down a certain path. All right, so research hacks. So you should be reviewing your own website, obviously your competitors, and look at your best competitors, the guys or girls who you want to be modeling on, or you're significantly similar to, but there's always going to be aspects that make you unique and specific, and it's important to highlight and focus on those items in your website. But look at your competitors and just see where they're at. If they're performing better than you online, there's probably reasons why. They might be outranking you. They might evidently be growing their business faster than you. Review their websites and see what's going on there. Also review interstate and international companies that are just like you. Oftentimes you'll learn things in particularly bigger cities around the globe You can see companies just like you, or to a large degree like you, and what can you learn from looking at their websites, and what can be massaged in to produce an outcome for you. Cross industries as well can be powerful. So other industries, say for example you're the Lamborghini of your industry, or you're the you might be a budget provider, so you're the discount provider, whatever one of those brands are. You look at their websites and see, okay, from a branding perspective, what cross-industry websites can we learn something from? So shared brand and attitude. So if you've got a certain attitude that you feel is reflected really well in another cross-industry brand or website, check that out and see what you can learn to enhance your own branding and your attitude and communicate that. But the tools that you want to look at, Google Ads, if anyone's paying for ads, that's a really strong clue to suggest that their website, certainly if they're paying for Google Ads over the long term, they're either really foolish or their ads and their website is converting into real business. So if they're in business for any length of time, you would assume that it's the latter, that it's actually producing a great outcome. So you can look at their ads, look at their landing pages, look at their websites and say, right, this website, we know to some degree it's probably producing something for them, producing business, whether that be leads or sales. What can we learn from this, and how can we introduce those elements into our own website? And it's often the call to action. Might be a simple contact form, a soft offer, a lead magnet, whatever it is. Maybe they're requesting people contact for a quote, whatever it is in your circumstance. Look at quite a broad range of websites that are advertising. See if there's any lessons learned and commonalities between them and what can be modeled on yours. Same thing with search engine optimization. If anyone's invested into their website enough, because SEO, good SEO isn't cheap. If they've put the time and effort into doing it, their website, hopefully their website's producing an outcome for them. So you can learn in a similar fashion to you with the ads. I think it's definitely the ads. There's not many advertisers going on. Next step, look at the websites ranking really well for the phrases that you want to rank for, and see if you can reverse engineer out of that. And also look at the template providers. By the way, if we can look at these things closer together, if you want to, and I'll give you the opportunity to make a time with me. So template providers, the beauty of that is we never suggest you just plug and play, pick up a template and plug in your own content. Never, by no means do I ever suggest that. What I would recommend is looking at some of the template providers, because you can then look at what website designs are trending. So if you can see what's popular, you can say, okay, a huge proportion of people think this website, for whatever reason, this design is really popular. So the weighted numbers suggest this one's the way to go. Look at that in comparison to some of the advertisers and the SEO websites as well, and see what lessons and commonalities that you can manipulate into your own design to produce an outcome similar to the best performing websites in your marketplace. All right, so they're research hacks. Evaluate. There's always opportunity to evaluate what you've already got. So you can evaluate your website once you've launched it, then test, measure and tweak, and that lends itself to the incremental improvements that you can potentially get someone on retainer, someone like me, to continually work on refining and developing and producing better outcomes for you. That's obviously an opportunity. You can do that on an ongoing basis, or you might just leave it for now, and in a year's time, or whenever you determine, make a time in your diary to say, right, we're going to evaluate everything and look at reworking and doing it that way. There's also bigger companies will often do prototypes, and they'll go through testing and they'll hire. It can be a really expensive process, but I always suggest for small businesses, launch what you've got and test it in the real world, knowing that it's a website, so it can easily be changed back if you need to. So test it in the real world rather than hire people to do testing in that. I think obviously you want it to function correctly, not be broken, all that kind of gear, but prototyping and hiring people to test can be expensive in some instances. There are ways. Over here you've got usertesting.com, userbrain.com. This is where great little tools that I encourage you to use if you want to get some insights from other people. What it is, you set up your little project, you set up a series of questions of what you want people to do. They'll jump online, they'll go through your website, they'll answer your questions. So you hear them talking, you hear them clicking through, they're answering whatever it is you want to test you want them to test out, and then they'll answer the questions and give you a sense of what's going on. And oftentimes you'll pick up things you didn't even consider when you just see them navigating through your website and trying stuff and what they found difficult and that sort of thing. So just by watching those videos, you might get a bunch of those done, and you might find commonalities. So these two different tools, one's a subscription model, one's just a once-off project. So check them both out, see what's going to fit for you best. Customer interviews and questions. All these tools are flawed in some degree, and certainly when you ask a customer or a client to review your website, they're going to be reviewing it with a different lens. So they're looking at it in a far different way to they would if they were just using your website in a natural way. So normally they're just jumping on there to look for the content. They're picking up some insights into your brand and the quality and all those kind of things, who you are subconsciously. But once you ask them to review it, they're going to have a whole bunch of different rationale. So that's why some of these tools are helpful as well, but some of them you've got to take it with a grain of salt. So this is really evaluates as suitable for a website facelift, so if you're making improvements, enhancements to existing site, and it's a suitable time to evaluate what you've already got prior to planning a redesign. So it's good to get some insights, so you're not just picking on design style just because it's your personal preference and taste. You're doing the research. So bulletproof rules, what I call the bulletproof rules. Contextual recognition, so we'll just go through these really fast. Contextual recognition is where you might use icons that people have learned to understand what they are. So for example, a magnifying glass, that might be for a search tool, things of that nature. So people learn over time. The hamburger menu is a good example. So that's the 3 lines or 4 lines, whatever it might be. We now realize that's a menu, so you click on that, and they'll first really common on mobiles. Initially, the first people jumped on with the websites in the same fashion, and people didn't really know what it was, but now everyone's on their mobiles, everyone knows what it is, it's not a big deal. So people learn over time how to interact with the website. Contextual recognition, that's when you use icons that are recognised. So you don't get too fancy, too cute doing icons that are not recognisable or mean that and don't mean anything to people. Minimalist look, that works great because it'll function really well on multiple devices. You got your phone, you got your tablets, various sizes, you got little laptops and huge screens as well that some people use. So if you've got a minimal look, a minimal design, it always looks more professional, but also it's able to scale and work at various sizes. So that's why we encourage that. That's what we think is a bulletproof rule. Consistent, so it should be consistent. If I'm interacting with your website on my mobile, maybe on the train, just killing time, looking at something that I'm interested in buying down the track, and then when I'm more serious, I might be looking at from my computer. It needs to be really consistent in terms of the look and feel and the way I can navigate around your website. So I can find what it is I was looking for. I might have been reading something and I want to get back to there at a later date. It's really important, and sometimes it's the same day. Maybe you're on the train in the morning, then in the evening on your computer you're looking more closely, so you want that consistency across all platforms, and same consistency across pages as well. So the menu, the navigation is always the same, the layout's always consistent, so people learn how to get around and find the stuff that they're looking for. So user controls. It's really important that people can navigate the website really well. And if you've got processes and functions, maybe that it's necessary for people to go forward and back in a process. If there's multiple stages in a form, for example, and they need to backtrack and think, oh, you know what, that last form I needed to adjust something, click back without losing everything and forwards, vice versa. So that's user control. So they're the bulletproof rules. I know this has been a really short and sharp. There's lots that we can go on together, but it's best just to focus on the things that make the most impact for your website. So here's how I'd like you to jump on calendly.com. You're probably familiar with that. Wes-Towers. I'll have it put in the comments as well. So you can just click on that, book a time. Let's talk about it together. And maybe we can work through some of the research methodologies together, review your own website. I'd give my insights and what I think based on working on websites all the time. That's all I do pretty much. That's my business. So give you some suggestions of what I've learned and picked up and potentially on similar websites to what you've got yourself, and what shortcuts we might be able to apply to your own website to produce a better outcome.